Jesse, lead pastor for Two Rivers Bible Church, and I'm so glad you can make it today. Today's topic is about leadership. I mean, everybody wants leaders around them. Everybody who's in the corporate world, if you're an owner, a CEO, a manager, a supervisor, if you're in the nonprofit world and you're the director or somebody who works in the nonprofit arena, or if you're in the church world, a pastor, an executive pastor, a lead pastor, a volunteer, director, you're always looking at your sphere, at your environment, at your outlook, at what you're seeing out there, and you're looking for leaders. And I always get the question asked by other leaders, how do you find leaders? It seems like leaders are in high demand and in very short supply. So where do you find them? Well, first of all, you got to understand what leadership is. You got to understand what leadership does. You got to understand what leadership is characterized by. And so let me tackle first the definition of leadership. Leadership, simply put, is the ability to influence others. John Maxwell put it this way: leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And there's a lot of truth to that. As a matter of fact, there is that's the core of what leadership is. I still remember seeing the movie Braveheart. It's one of my top 5 movies, all-time movies. And there's this one scene where William Wallace is confronted by Robert the Bruce, which will be the future king of Scotland. And Robert the Bruce says to William Wallace, listen, they want to follow you. Give them something. And William Wallace looks at Robert the Bruce in that one scene in the movie, and he says, men don't follow titles, they follow courage. And if you lead, they will follow. And that goes back to the whole idea of leadership is contagious, but also leadership is the ability to be able to influence the people around you. Now, there's 5 myths about leadership that I want to tackle today. And the first myth of leadership is this, and that is that leaders are born, not made. It's this whole idea that you have to be born a leader, that if you're not born a leader, you're not going to lead. But the reality is this. It's different. It's totally different. Now, the reality is you can build leaders. Now, there are people that have a certain predisposition to lead. They have a certain spiritual gifting, but you can also train that. You can develop that. You know, the idea that they are only born is just not. It's just a myth. Now, and this is how I know this. It is easier to activate a leader than it is to motivate a follower. It is easier to activate a leader than it is to motivate a follower. In other words, those who you can train and develop as leaders, you'll be able to activate them. But those who are not going to lead, they're just not going to ever step up. They're not going to exercise their influence. You're just not going to be able to motivate them to do that. Leadership can be learned. The second myth is this, and that is that leadership is a rare skill. And that is true. It is rare. But it's not rare because of the idea that few are born with it. That's not why it's rare. It's a myth because it's rare because it's not taught. When you go to the higher level of education, whether it's management education, university, or post, graduate level, let's put it that way, graduate college degree, a master's in leadership, or if you get a business degree, one thing that I've realized is that it's not designed to develop leaders. If you go to the classes and you go through the coursework, it's designed to help you manage. And that's true at the undergraduate and the graduate level leadership classes as well. They're called leadership classes, but they really don't teach you leadership skills. And so it's rare because you're rarely taught how to lead in the environment of a classroom. Now, the third myth is this, and that is that leadership only exists at the top. That leadership is only at the top, but the reality is that that's a myth. You can be a leader and not have the leadership position. As a matter of fact, you can be a second chair leader. By that, what I mean is that you can be in the second chair, beside the leader. You're not the positional leader, but you can still be a leader. If you have influence with the people around you, guess what? You are a leader. If you have some measure of influence, leadership, mobility, you can move people to a common goal, a common direction, now you're a leader. And you can be at the bottom of the rung and still be a good leader. Now, how do you lead if you're not in charge? Very simple. Identify the area that you are responsible of, and as you define that area, you choose what area you're going to tackle that's in your department, your division, your ministry, and you decide, I'm going to take ownership of this area. And then what you do, you make a plan for your area, and then you execute that plan. And that doesn't mean that you're going over your boss, or you're going over your manager, you're going over your supervisor. That just means that you're taking ownership of your area, and you're moving and influencing the people that are in that department, in that area, and you're influencing them to go with you. Number 4 is that all leaders are charismatic. That's a huge, huge myth, that all leaders are charismatic. Now, if we're honest with one another, and people like to hang out with charismatic leaders that have charm and charisma, they can just kind of reel you in. But let me kind of redefine for you what charisma really is. Charisma is not necessarily the ability to be able to charm a room or to somehow be winsome. Charisma is this idea of a mindset that is focused on the other person. That's what charisma is. It's to be able to think and react in ways that you're thinking what the other person must be feeling or thinking or doing. So in other words, you walk into a room. This is what charisma does. You walk into a room, instead of being insecure, instead of looking inwardly, you're looking at the other individual and you're thinking, okay, they must be insecure. They must be thinking, I don't know what I'm doing here. So what you do when you have charisma is you go and meet them where they're at. You're the one that engages. You're the one that breaks the barrier of insecurity and goes meets the person where they are at. Now, this is the reality about charisma. Charisma can get you places. It can get you places. As a matter of fact, it can get you places that your character can't sustain. But character is what keep you in those places. So charisma may open doors for you, but really character is what is able to sustain you in those positions that you get through charisma. Now, number 5 is this, that leaders control by manipulation. That leaders control by manipulation. Nothing can be further than the truth than that. Leaders don't control, shouldn't control by manipulation. As a matter of fact, if we're engaging as leaders in manipulation, that's just wrong. That's just not right. That's wrong. There's never a situation where a leader has to engage other people by form of manipulation. If there's manipulation, that is a weak, that is not a good leader. And so I look at and I think about the Marine Corps, for example. This is interesting, fascinating thing that they do at the Marine Corps. If you stand and watch and you're ever gotten the opportunity to be part of the situation where they're eating, you'll always see the junior officers eat first. And then, the vast majority at least. And then, the vast majority of the senior officers wait. They hold back. They let the junior officers eat first. Why? Why would they do that? It's because the culture of the Marine Corps is one of such that they are ingraining into their environment, into their culture, the idea that others come first. That you risk your life, you risk your self-interest, you risk your desires, you risk those, you put them as secondary to the needs of the group, the needs of others. And it's the same way with leadership. You know, the idea that leadership has to lead to control is just a myth. You see it for example, in the Marine Corps. So those are the 5 myths of leadership. Hopefully this instructional video has been helpful to you, to your nonprofit organization, to you as a business leader. Maybe you're a CEO, maybe you're in ministry, and you're looking for insight and tips on how to lead and how to lead well. You guys have a good one.